Some people think narcissists eventually get tired, that one day they'll just disappear, find someone else to target, and you'll finally be able to breathe again. But what if time isn't on your side? What if, instead of fading away, they start growing inside your mind, taking hold of the silence, twisting every glance, every calculated reply into something that keeps you stuck? Because they don't give up. They feed off your exhaustion, your effort to fix things, to understand them, to save something that was never real in the first place. You've felt that before, haven't you? That sense that you're trapped in a game you never agreed to play, where every move you make gets used against you, where you try to explain yourself, ask for empathy, beg for a moment of humanity, and all you get in return is ice. How many times did you go back hoping that this time it might be different? If you've ever felt caught in a cycle that drains you from the inside out, stay. What you're about to hear might just be the beginning of your freedom. It'll show you there is a way out, and you don't have to lose yourself to find it. Because when a narcissist realizes they've lost control, when they no longer have access to your emotions, that's when they start to unravel. But that unraveling doesn't come from fighting them with their own weapons. That's where so many get it wrong, thinking they can win the emotional war against someone who only wants to see them fall. The real shift, it's not louder, it's quieter. It's when you stop playing. It's the mindset of the Stoic. Being Stoic doesn't mean turning into stone. It's not about pretending you don't feel or bottling it all up. It's about feeling without surrendering, seeing the chaos and choosing not to become part of it. It's anchoring yourself while they try to drag you back into the storm. And the Stoic does it with precision, not by fighting, but by stepping back emotionally. That calm, deliberate withdrawal, that's the real torment for someone who thrives on your emotional instability. The Stoic breaks the cycle by removing the narcissist's power at the root. He doesn't play the same game, he changes the rules. He watches, reflects, decides based on principle, not impulse. And the first move, it's tough, strategic silence. Not silence from fear, but silence as a choice to not feed the fire. When a narcissist talks and gets nothing back, they lose ground. They crave noise. They crave attention. They live for chaos. And when you take that away, they begin to wither. But it's not just about silence. It's about presence without accessibility. Being there, but unavailable. Meeting their rage with stillness. Meeting manipulation with neutrality. Holding eye contact when they expect tears. Smiling gently while they twist with frustration, realizing they can no longer reach you. That doesn't just confuse them, it undoes them. Because it's not ignorance. It's the quiet proof that their access has been revoked. The door is shut, and that power they thought they had, gone. Then comes the desperation. They'll reach for anything. Promises, sweet talk, nostalgia. But the Stoic knows better. The Stoic doesn't negotiate with someone who built their power on wounds and pretended they never saw the bleeding. The Stoic doesn't seek revenge. He protects. And for a narcissist, that's as close as it gets to being erased. You know you're winning when you start living, not to prove anything, but because you've chosen to stop orbiting someone who only drained you. Suddenly, life begins to make sense again. You sleep more peacefully. The anxiety fades, and something deeper arrives. Peace. And you realize you don't need closure. You don't need anyone to understand. You just need that peace. And when it comes, the narcissist feels it, feels the loss of significance, the shrinking of their role in your life. And here's the final blow. You stop caring. Not out of bitterness, but out of liberation. You're no longer tied to the pain they caused. They become what they always were, someone from the past, not a villain, not a hero, just someone. And for a person addicted to being seen as special, that indifference is unbearable. The truth? The Stoic doesn't need to destroy the narcissist. There's no glory in fighting someone who never played fair. The victory isn't in the battle, it's in the exit. Mental, emotional, relational. The Stoic steps out of reach. Every step further from the chaos sends one clear, silent message. You have no power here anymore. And that kind of strength isn't born overnight. It comes through awareness, pain, discipline, and choice. But it does come. And once it's there, it doesn't leave. The narcissist can try every trick, every play, but none of it lands. Because the Stoic has rebuilt his center. And for someone who lives to control others, that's the end game. Narcissists will always insist the problem is you, never them. And over time, it starts to wear you down. It seeps into your thoughts, your body, your energy, until there's barely anything left. That's why it's so vital to wake up. Not for them, for you. The first and possibly most powerful way to throw a narcissist off balance is with intentional silence. Not silence out of fear, not silence as submission, but a clear, conscious choice not to react. Narcissists thrive on your emotional engagement. They feed off your reactions. Deny them that, and suddenly their grip begins to slip. Picture this. The narcissist starts a fight, throws bait, expecting your anger, your defense, your pain. But you don't bite. You stay quiet, calm, focused. And in that silence, they're left alone with what they fear most, themselves. Their tactics lose power. You don't just hold your energy, you reclaim it. And that subtle refusal to play their game, it hits harder than any words ever could. Second tactic, unshakable composure. Narcissists love to provoke. It gives them a sense of control. But what happens when those provocations don't work? When the insults, jabs, and manipulation fall flat? That's when the foundation of their influence begins to crack. You don't argue. You don't defend yourself. You acknowledge their words without flinching, without emotion. And that unnerves them. Your stillness becomes a mirror, one they can't stand to face. Their control fades, and all that's left is frustration and confusion. Third tactic, live a full, authentic life without them. The most unexpected way to torment a narcissist is simply to be happy. Not performative happiness, real fulfillment, growth, joy, independence. When your world no longer revolves around them, when they see you thriving without their presence, it threatens their entire narrative. They want to be the center of your universe. But when your light shines elsewhere, on your goals, your passions, your peace, they fade into irrelevance. And that loss of relevance, that's unbearable to them. So build, heal, create. Surround yourself with what's real, what uplifts you. Invest in who you are without needing their validation. That's not just healing, that's liberation. Fourth and final blow, complete emotional indifference. The ultimate loss for a narcissist isn't your anger, it's your indifference. When their presence no longer moves you, when they become just another face in the crowd, they lose every ounce of power they once held. You're not cold, you're free. Stoicism teaches that you control only your own reactions, never the actions of others. Once you embrace that, their approval becomes irrelevant. You stop chasing closure. You stop needing them to see your worth. And they hate that. These 4 Stoic responses, silence, composure, self-fulfillment, and indifference, dismantle the narcissist's influence brick by brick. This isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming your peace, your self-respect, your life. A Stoic doesn't retreat out of fear. He steps away from chaos because he's found something stronger, himself. He knows his worth. He's decided not to keep bleeding energy for someone who only knew how to drain him. The narcissist? He stays behind, right where he expected to find you. But now there's only silence. And that silence echoes louder than any goodbye ever could. It's in that quiet they realize they've lost access, not just to you, but to the emotional energy they used to harvest from you. You've stopped explaining, stopped defending, stopped hoping they'd change. And that's when their control truly dies. All that's left is a void, and you're not in it anymore. That emptiness, it's theirs now. The things that once broke you, they strengthen you now. Every hit they threw, every manipulative tactic they used, They bounce off the shield you've built. And it's not made of stone. It's made of clarity, of the realization that your energy is sacred, that your worth isn't up for negotiation. They expect rage, they expect pain, they expect tears, but instead, they get silence. And in that silence, their entire strategy crumbles, because they don't know how to exist without your reaction. A Stoic doesn't defeat the narcissist by force. He wins by no longer seeing them as relevant. Their voice no longer defines your reality. They're not a threat anymore. They're just a reminder of what you'll never allow again. And for someone who needs to be everything becoming nothing, that's the ultimate failure. But don't forget, this transformation didn't happen overnight. There was no sudden awakening. This is daily work. Every time you don't respond. Every time you choose peace over chaos. Every time you remind yourself that your freedom matters more than their opinion. It's one more nail in the coffin of their manipulation. They used to thrive on your chaos. Now, they're faced with your calm. And it burns. Every attempt to provoke you hits a wall. And that wall is made of something unshakable. You. You know who you are now. You know what you deserve. You don't need their apologies, their pity, their validation. Because you've taken back what they tried to steal, yourself. It might look like silence from the outside, but inside, it's a revolution. You're no longer looking for answers in their eyes. You've turned inward. And there, you've found truth. A Stoic knows peace isn't the absence of pain, it's the presence of wisdom. And that's something the narcissist will never grasp. While they fight for the last word, you have no need to speak, no need to convince, no need to explain. You already said everything you needed to, the moment you walked away, and that silence speaks louder than anything else ever could. They watch you slip away, watch the power fade, and it destroys them. Not because they lost you, but because they can't possess you anymore. And that's the difference. They never truly loved you. They wanted control. But once you're free, you stop being their object. You become a person, untouchable. This isn't the end of the story. This is the beginning of the real one, not the one they wrote, the one you and write. Without them, without pain, with peace, not as weakness, but as strength. Stoicism isn't an escape. It's a return to yourself, to who you were before someone else tried to rewrite your identity. This is where the quiet power of the Stoic truly lives, in detachment. While the narcissist is constantly chasing validation, needing others to reflect his worth back to him, the Stoic simply exists. He doesn't need applause, he doesn't need witnesses, and that's what terrifies the narcissist most, that kind of independence. No pleading, no second chances, just a calm, steady, I'm okay, even without you. To the narcissist, that feels like betrayal. He never thought you'd actually leave. He believed you'd bend, break, forgive, no matter what he did. But when he comes face to face with someone who's done trying, someone who has drawn an emotional boundary he can't cross, he's stuck. There's no open door anymore, no access. That's when he starts denying, twisting, blaming. It was just a joke. You're overreacting. If you'd acted differently, none of this would have happened. But the Stoic doesn't engage. He doesn't need closure through chaos. He's already found clarity, and that light exposes every lie he used to ignore. For the longest time, he thought maybe he could fix the narcissist. Maybe he was just broken inside. Maybe all he needed was love. But now he knows. It's not his job to fix someone who doesn't even think they're broken. The Stoic doesn't say, "Change for me." He says, "I'm changing because I can't live like this anymore." And that change? It's not loud. It doesn't come with speeches or big declarations, it shows up in actions. The Stoic speaks less, but when he does, it carries more weight than ever. His silence becomes a wall, solid, unshakable. And the narcissist runs into it again and again until exhausted he backs off. What was once weakness has become resolve. That resolve shifts everything. People around the Stoic begin to notice. The dynamics change. Toxic personalities start fading away because the Stoic no longer sends out signals that say, "I'm an easy target." What he radiates now is self-worth, and to a narcissist, that feels like death. The death of the role he once played in your life, and one he'll never reclaim. So the narcissist tries to crawl back in. He plays the nostalgia card, the remember how good it used to be. He tugs at your guilt, your memories, but you're not there anymore. Not in your mind. You've outgrown the cage. You don't need to remember moments that only looked like love. You finally know it wasn't love. It was illusion. And illusions have no place in your new reality. This new life, it's not perfect. There's still pain. There's grief. Doubt creeps in sometimes. But there's also something real, truth, peace. And every single day gets lighter. Because every day without manipulation is a day of freedom. And every day without the narcissist is a step back toward yourself. The Stoic doesn't need a final conversation. He doesn't need an apology. He doesn't wait for remorse. Because he knows if it came, it wouldn't be real. He doesn't need the narcissist to end the story. He already ended it himself. That's how he took his power back. The narcissist doesn't know what to do without control, so he fights harder to return. Not because of love, but because of power. But the Stoic understands now. Even a single reply is a step back into the trap, so he stays silent, and he keeps walking forward. That peace the Stoic carries now, it wasn't free. It came at the cost of pain, of sleepless nights, of disappointment. But from that pain came something stronger. Not strength to keep fighting, strength to walk away. And that's a kind of power the narcissist will never understand, because he never walks away. He clings, even when there's nothing left to hold. This is where the story splits for good. The place where your strength used to end is now the beginning of something else. Not because you won, but because you stopped needing to fight. It's no longer about him. It's about you. Everything you ever needed to hear, you've told yourself. Everything you ever needed, you gave yourself. Boundaries, peace, respect. That's what makes you a Stoic. Not the absence of emotion, but the refusal to be ruled by it. This calm, this way of living, the choice to choose peace over chaos, that's what the narcissist can't stand. And so he leaves, or he stays, but without power. And that's his end. And your beginning. It's hard to explain what really happens inside a narcissist when they realize they've lost emotional access to you. Not physical access, emotional. He might still be watching you, reaching out, trying to remind you of how it used to be. But the thing he's looking for, it's gone. That open space you once left for him, you've sealed it, and he knows it. So he does what he knows, plays the victim, spins the story. Suddenly, you're the cruel one. You're the cold, heartless one. But deep down, nothing terrifies a narcissist more than peace that doesn't come from him. You used to jump at every word. Now you don't move at all. And suddenly he's no longer part of the equation. He becomes confused. Because in his world, no one actually leaves. People are tools, objects, and objects don't walk away on their own. But you did. Not like a tool, like a conscious human being who chose to break the connection. And for him, that's defeat, a defeat he can't process. On the outside, he might still look composed. He might still be pulling strings, telling others you've lost your mind, that you were unstable. But inside, panic. Because every day you don't respond proves something terrifying to him, that he doesn't have you anymore. And maybe he never really did. He just had access to places inside you that you've now reclaimed. This return to yourself isn't instant. It's a process. Sometimes it comes with doubt, with that whisper in your head asking, "Did I do the right thing?" But all it takes is one look back, at the chaos, the pain, the empty promises wrapped in grand gestures. And suddenly it's clear, what you have now, this quiet space inside yourself, is worth more than everything he ever promised. A Stoic doesn't look back with hatred or regret. He looks back with clarity, not to question what happened, but to understand it. And from that understanding, freedom is born, not from revenge, but from awareness. And that's the moment the narcissist finally loses all power. The one who tried to break you ended up making you stronger. Not because you owe him thanks, but because he forced you to grow. To stop waiting for recognition. To stop clinging to promises. To stop hoping that one day he'd finally see all you did for him. He won't. And the best part? You don't need him to anymore. Something inside you shifts. You breathe differently now, slower, steadier. Your inner world is no longer held hostage. You start making decisions for yourself, not for someone else's expectations. That's the beginning of something real. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. The narcissist might keep coming back, with apologies, promises, maybe even tears. But you don't read those the same anymore. You don't see love, you see patterns. And that ability to see through it all, that's one of Stoicism's greatest gifts. You no longer search for truth in his words. You find it in how you feel when he's around. And that feeling, it's not safety, it's not comfort, it drains you. And because you finally see it for what it is, you know now, not everything that pulls you back is home. Sometimes it's just old pain dressed in something familiar. When the Stoic decides to walk away, he doesn't look back. Not because he doesn't feel, but because he knows that his life is no place for someone who keeps burning him with the same fire, no matter how beautiful that flame once seemed. So he keeps moving, quietly. Not as a show of strength, but as a simple step forward that says, now it's my turn. And even though that step makes no noise, it echoes in the narcissist's mind for a long time. Because he wasn't expecting an end. He was waiting for your return. But that return isn't coming. And you're growing. Slowly. Steadily. Each day you become more yourself. Less broken. Less tied to someone who never really saw you. That's where the true strength lies. Not in destroying someone else, but in rebuilding yourself. From the outside, maybe it seems like nothing's changed. You go to work. You laugh. You talk like always. But inside, a quiet revolution. You're no longer the one adjusting yourself, walking on eggshells, trying to avoid explosions. Now you decide who gets close. And the narcissist is no longer on that list. It's hard to explain that shift. But you feel it. In the silence. In the way you fall asleep without a racing mind. In how your body stays calm when someone says his name. He doesn't control you anymore. He doesn't hold you anymore. Not because he let go, but because you did. And that's a big difference. It's one thing when someone leaves. It's another when you choose to let them go. The narcissist can't grasp that he's lost control. In his mind, there's still a version of the story where you'll react, apologize, blame yourself. But instead you meet him with silence, no explanations, no emotions. You turn, you walk away. And something inside him snaps. Because this time, it's not a game. It's over. But for the Stoic, that ending isn't something to celebrate. It's something to honor. Because it's not a win over someone else, it's a win over who you had to become to survive him. It's a return, not to the past, but to yourself. And that return is calm, steady, and real. With every step forward, you leave behind pieces of the past. And in every moment of silence you allow, there's space where chaos used to scream. Now there's peace. And that's what the narcissist will never know, because he doesn't understand peace. He can't be alone. He feeds on turmoil. And you're no longer his source. Something in you has matured. You no longer believe every word you hear. You're not moved by late regrets. You don't get pulled in by apologies that are just setups for more manipulation. You don't base your decisions on others' feelings anymore. You've started listening to something else, your own voice. And you realize now, it had been telling the truth all along. You just hadn't wanted to hear it. But now, you're listening. And the more you hear yourself, the less you hear him. And that's silence. It's clean. No guilt, no pain, no what-ifs. Just stillness. And in that stillness, you grow. Not for applause, not to impress, but so that when you sit with yourself, it finally feels like home. The narcissist feels it. It threatens him. He tries to find cracks. Maybe he watches you, messages you, shows up in places he knows you'll be. But he can't read you anymore. What once was an open book is now locked, and you're the only one holding the key. Your boundaries aren't just ideas now. They're action. You don't say never again. You simply don't go back. And that kind of strength? It's quiet, subtle, but it's felt in everything you do. And it shields you. Not from the world, but from who you once let destroy you. A Stoic doesn't wait for an apology or recognition. He knows it won't come. Or if it does, it'll come wrapped in another trap. So he doesn't need it. He doesn't need closure. Closure comes the moment you stop trying to make sense of nonsense. Maybe memories will still catch you off guard, but they won't carry you away anymore. You won't get stuck there. You don't go back. You just realize how far you've come. And that's healing. Not because it doesn't hurt anymore, but because it no longer controls you. And with each day you don't respond, you get stronger. With each day you don't reach out, you set yourself freer. Not because you've gone cold, but because you've allowed yourself to be whole again. And that wholeness? It no longer passes as love that once dragged you under. What once broke you is now proof that you survived. And more than that, you've changed, not into someone new, but into the person you were meant to be. Had no one ever tried to tear you down, the narcissist will never understand that. But he doesn't have to. This isn't his story anymore, it's yours, and it begins now. Silence. It's a strange thing. For some, it heals. For others, it's a trap. But for the narcissist, silence is like standing in front of a mirror that reflects nothing. It terrifies him. That's why he always tried to break something in you, to make you scream, cry, react. Because once you stopped responding, he disappeared. And with him, his sense of importance. Where you found peace in the quiet, he finds panic. A Stoic doesn't reflect others. He doesn't seek to be seen through their eyes. He holds the mirror only to himself, his choices, his awareness, his path. And that's what the narcissist can't handle. He has nowhere to reflect himself anymore. He tried to shape you into something he could define, told you who you were, what you felt, what you should think. And for a while, you might have believed him. But now you no longer give him space to redraw your lines. Your identity no longer takes shape from outside forces. It's coming back to you, and it's solid. And the calmer you are, the more unsettled he becomes. Not because you're cold, but because you finally see the game. You can tell when someone's pulling you back into fog, into confusion, into endless explanations, and you're simply not playing along anymore. You're not the same person who feared losing someone. Now you know. Sometimes loss is where everything begins. Your stability no longer wavers with someone else's mood. A glance, a silence, a tone. They don't shake you like they used to, because you know now. Calm isn't weakness, it's discipline, and you've mastered it. He might try to remind you. Reach out, change his tone, send a message, spark a reaction. But it all feels hollow now. None of it touches you anymore. That place inside, the one that used to ache, it's yours now, not his. And his world? It's starting to fall apart because you were the center of it. And now you're gone. Not just physically, emotionally, energetically. You're no longer available. And that's the moment it finally hits him. This time, It's real. Before, all it took was a bit of pressure, a well-timed apology, and you'd come back. Now, you don't. Not because you've turned cold, but because you've learned what self-respect means. And self-respect doesn't walk back into what broke it. Sure, sometimes the sadness comes. That's normal. Memories resurface. But you don't chase them anymore. You don't believe them. They come. They pass. No rage. No return. No need to explain anything. That's the turning point. When a memory becomes just that, a memory. Not a temptation. Not a wound. Just a piece of the past with no grip on your present. He stays where you left him, and you move on. Not fast, but steadily. Moving on isn't about dramatic gestures. It's made of small, firm decisions. Every no that used to choke in your throat. Every that's enough. Every moment where you choose silence over chaos. And it all builds. Slowly, but permanently. Where guilt once lived, now there's compassion. But not for him. For you. You see the version of yourself who believed harder, who loved deeper, who hoped longer. And you don't judge that version. You thank it. Because it brought you here. And here? Here is where you're finally loyal to yourself. You're no longer turned toward him waiting for a reaction, for approval. You're not going back. Because now you know. You don't need to. And in that knowing lives your strength. Quiet. Unshakable. Like water that doesn't stop flowing, just changes direction. And you're moving. Away from the hurt. Away from the cycle. Toward the peace that always belonged to you. You just had to reclaim it. It's a strange feeling, really. You lived for so long under the shadow of someone who controlled your nights and days without raising their voice. Sometimes it was just a look, a pause, a phrase said slightly differently, and your world would tremble. Now that same person speaks, and all you hear are words. Nothing more. They don't pierce anymore. They pass like wind. A Stoic doesn't feel nothing. He chooses carefully who he allows to reach him, who deserves his attention, his reactions, his emotions. And the narcissist? He lost that access. You close the door. He still knocks, but he won't get back in. This is the stage where he gets desperate. Even if he looks composed on the outside, inside he's suffocating. Because what he once controlled is gone. You're gone. And he didn't just lose access, and he lost the power to mold you. He'll start cycling through his masks, pulling out every persona he's ever used, the victim, the lover, the broken man. But you've moved past that. You can read between the lines now. What once cracked your heart barely registers anymore. You don't fall for promises because you've seen them for what they are. Tools. Your life no longer spins around needing answers. You're not lost in the fog. You're not chasing the why. His motives no longer matter. You've learned your role isn't to decode a toxic person, it's to heal yourself. And that shift, that's what crushes him. He doesn't want you healed. He needs you doubting, open, reaching for meaning. But now that you've disconnected, all that's left for him is frustration. Quiet, gnawing, brutal. While he loses his ground, you find yours. Every moment you choose not to react. Every second you don't let the past drag you back. That's your rebuilding. Not on the outside, within. And now it holds. A Stoic doesn't build boundaries out of rage or pain. He builds them out of clarity. He's seen what lifts him, what drains him, what defines him, and he's chosen. Not against anyone, but for himself. And that kind of choice doesn't need justification. Maybe you once needed to explain everything, wanted him to understand, to take responsibility, to see you clearly. But now, you know that was always a trap. Every time you explain, you give up ground. And the Stoic doesn't give ground anymore, he doesn't argue. Your silence now isn't defeat, it's healing. Every moment you choose stillness over defense proves you don't need others to understand your emotions. You do. And that's enough. You've earned your enough. The one who once unraveled you with a single sentence now talks into emptiness. You don't care what he wants. You're not waiting for a better version of him. You don't need a second chance. Because you're no longer the one who needs it. You're the one who walked away. Quietly, calmly, without a scene. And that calm? It's not absence of sound. It's a decision. It's when your reactions are no longer someone else's to control. And when someone who once hurt you can't shake you anymore, that's freedom. Not given by the world. Claimed by you. He sees it. And yes, it hurts him. Not because he loved you, but because he lost you. He never wanted to know you. He wanted to own you. And now all he has is a void. Because you took yourself back. And that moment, that's the end. For him. But for you, it's the beginning. You're no longer waiting, no longer pleading, no longer returning. You're moving forward. And that's the difference between someone who merely survives and someone who's finally decided to live. A narcissist doesn't accept reality. He fights it. And when reality starts showing him that no one's listening anymore, that his words no longer cause a ripple, panic sets in. He used to feel certain that he always had a way back in, that the door was cracked open. But now, that door is shut, locked. And you burned the key. The Stoic looks back without pain, not because he forgot, but because he's no longer ruled by the past. His mind isn't chained to memories that once disguised themselves as love. Now he sees things as they were, clearly, without illusions. And that clarity, that's freedom. Memories that once stung now simply pass through. They don't stop him. They don't trigger doubt. They just remind him of the path he'll never walk again. That's the strength of the Stoic. He didn't run from the pain. He moved through it, walked through the fire, and came out the other side not as a victim, but as someone who realized he never had to burn again. Meanwhile, the narcissist spirals. When playing the victim doesn't work, he tries the hero. When guilt fails, he shifts to shame. He'll remind you of everything you did wrong. He'll rewrite the story. But you know the script now. You've read the lines. And you know that real connection doesn't come from manipulation. It comes from truth. Something he doesn't have. And that truth? That's your power. Every day you choose not to react. Every moment you stay silent. It lays another brick in the foundation of your new life. You don't need to prove your worth anymore. You know it. And because you do, his attempts to make you doubt yourself fall flat. He can talk, text, perform, but it won't touch you anymore. The Stoic understands that silence isn't just empty space between words. It's where breath happens, where stillness lives. He's not waiting for anyone else to fill that silence. He fills it himself. With awareness, with peace, with grounding. He's no longer dangling from strings. He stands firm. And that terrifies the narcissist, because he's lost control of the puppet who finally became a person. In the narcissist's world, every relationship is transactional. Every touch has a cost. Every tear a price tag. Every smile calculated. But the Stoic? He stopped looking for a price. He searches for value. And what lacks value, he lets go of, without regret, without drama, without resentment. Remember those moments when you stood in front of him and felt like you were nothing? When you begged for scraps of attention? Now picture him standing in front of you, and you feel nothing. No need to convince him of your worth. No anxiety. No need to shrink yourself. That right there is the quietest kind of victory. Your peace isn't an escape anymore. It's your natural state. You don't need silence to soothe pain. You need it because you know everything else is just noise. And once you understand that, you never go back to the noise. You lose the taste for it. The narcissist, he's screaming into a void. Maybe he's writing messages in the middle of the night. trying to get under your skin. Maybe he's playing the victim for others. But you're out of reach now. You're not his mirror, not his toy, not his reflection. And that's what destroys him. Not revenge, not hate, just absence. You're not wishing him harm. A Stoic doesn't waste energy on that. He just doesn't open doors that lead into darkness anymore. He's learned that darkness rarely arrives loudly. It comes in familiar voices. And now, that voice doesn't pull him in anymore. Every relationship you build now, every conversation where you feel seen, every morning you wake up without a knot in your stomach, it all proves one thing. You're walking a different path now. Not one that circles back to him, but one that leads back to you. And that's a direction you're never turning from. The one who once felt essential to your world, he's now just a name. A face that carries no weight. A voice that no longer pauses your breath. An emotion that's long since drained away. And when you look at it now, it's not sadness you feel. It's calm. Finally. And now that nothing holds you back, you move forward. Without fear of being pulled under. You've grown too aware, too grounded, too solid. And that's not arrogance. That's the outcome. That's what being a Stoic looks like. And a Stoic doesn't look back.